Hey, everybody. So glad to be with all of you here tonight. Yes, should be a great late night conversation. I am very excited. Let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just it's a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Hey, everybody. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. We are going to have yet another great late night conversation. Today, for those of you who live in the United States, tonight is the night before a holiday. I was asking a friend of mine what today was. Most common is Thanksgiving Eve. It's also called Blackout Wednesday. It's a lot of different things. A lot of kids are off school. A lot of kids leave school early. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. And Friday is the day after Thanksgiving. They call it Black Friday, and that's a very popular shopping day in the United States. That's when people, camp out in front of retail stores and they have outrageously good deals on all kinds of products at Walmart and Kmart and all kinds of stores. It's a really big shopping day in the United States. But this year, is a particularly important Black Friday for our community, because on Black Friday, we are going to have an 8-hour megathon stream on this channel. Very exciting. It's very, very, very exciting. And we just had our planning meeting about it. I can tell you more about it. There's going to be prizes. Yes, prizes. You will get prizes. There will be party games. The phone lines will be open all day. Anyone can call in and join. We'll be, talking about all kinds of different stuff. It's going to be really great. It's going to be absolutely tremendous. Come and join us on Friday. But tonight, we'll be doing it the same way we always do things. First, I give my opening remarks about whatever it is that I'm going to be talking about. Then from there, we will do the roll call, or I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. We'll find out who is on the other side of the camera. And then from there, I answer your super chat questions for the remainder of the night. So if there's something that you would like to talk about in the second half of our program, send me a super chat, Rumble rant on Rumble, or super chat on YouTube. That's the way we do things. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Now, check out the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel. Every morning we have morning messages. They've been great. This morning it was Briggy who was on there talking about with our Peace MAGA banner. And, we have had other people. Every morning you'll get another morning message, another connecting update from a member of our community. It's a great way to stay in touch. And we do have our letter to Trump that we composed, which we would very much like if people shared. Links are down below. We'll talk about that later in the second half of our show. But, we're all really, really glad, really, really, really glad to be here tonight. As I said, tune in on Friday. We are going to be live on this channel, on Peter Coffin's channel, and possibly a couple other channels all day long. It will be a membership drive for the Center for Political Innovation. You'll get some books, people who there'll be prizes. Let me just put it that way. There'll be prizes, party games, all kinds of stuff. So don't miss it. It's going to be fun. So, yeah, that's kind of what I've got in the docket. As you all know, I'm headed to Washington, D.C. on December 7th to support Scott Ritter at his upcoming event. And then I'm headed to Tampa, Florida to support the Uhuru 3 at their upcoming gathering. That's going to be really important. And yeah, then we're headed to the inauguration. We're having an event in Washington, D.C. the evening of the inauguration. We're going to be at the inauguration with our Peace MAGA banner, supporting Trump, supporting the possibility of peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. So that's what we've got going on. So opening remarks first. As I give my opening remarks, taking the super chats. Then from there, we do the roll call. And then from there, I answer your questions for the remainder of our show. So, with no further ado, I'm just going to get into the opening remarks. I have been on here last few nights emphasizing the seriousness of the situation that we are facing globally. And I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to get overly repetitive. But at the risk of maybe not everyone being on the same page, I do want to show you what was said today by Dmitry Polyansky, the Russian deputy ambassador to the United Nations. In case there's any question about how serious the situation in the world today is. This is the Russian deputy ambassador, Dmitry Polyansky, who was speaking before the UN Security Council about how Russia is being hit with ATACMS missiles sponsored by the United States. Dmitry Polyansky, who I've met before, who I've, reported on from the United Nations. And, he just flat out said it before the UN Security Council. You can't say people weren't warned. This is what he said. And you'd think this would be a little bit important. You'd think this would be all over American news, but it's not. Here's what he said.
Believe that it is our right to use our weapons against military facilities of those countries who allow the use of weapons against our facilities. We've warned you about this, but you've made your choice.
Pretty much says it all. I'll play it one more time in case you didn't hear it.
We believe that it is our right to use our weapons against military facilities of those countries who allow the use of weapons against our facilities. We've warned you about this, but you've made your choice.
Yeah, Russia says they have the right to strike military targets from countries that are enabling military strikes on them. The United States has been enabling and has enabled Ukraine to launch ATACMS missiles into Russia. And so they said, look, at this point, a military strike on the United States, on France, that is our right. And we warned you. Now, again, I expect that when Russia responds, we're going to be told, oh my goodness. And there's just so many lies about this war in Ukraine. So many lies about this war in Ukraine. And I can go over all the details as I've gone over on these streams time and time again about why the war in Ukraine is happening, how the U.S. violently overthrew the Ukrainian government in 2014, about how since that time, Russia has been trying to negotiate peace so the people in the eastern regions can live in peace and be respected. And the response of the U.S. government has been to bomb them and provide Ukraine with weaponry with which to bomb them. There was a peace deal called the Minsk Agreement, and that peace deal was completely ignored. And for 8 years, these people have been dying. This is a monument in Donetsk called the Alley of Angels to all the children who've died since 2014 at the hands of the U.S.-backed Ukrainian government. And it's been 8 years of bombing, 8 years of killing. And after 8 years, Russia said, look, we're going to move in. And Ukraine was talking about joining NATO, and Ukraine was talking about getting nuclear weapons. And Russia said, okay, we have to stop this, right? You're slaughtering people on our border. If you're setting up a hostile government right on our border, you overthrew the democratically elected government and you installed a government made up of fanatics who hate us. And you're now arming those fanatics to kill all the people in the country that do like us. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Are we just supposed to just sit back and let this continue? We gave you 8 years, guys. We gave you a peace deal, the Minsk Agreement. We did everything possible to prevent this. But here we are. Here we are. And so Russia moved its forces in to protect the people of Donetsk and the people of Lugansk. And the Western world has responded to this as if it's aggression. And even though the majority of the American people do not want it, the U.S. government has pumped billions of our taxpayer dollars into Ukraine. And the American people, not only do they not want this, they voted in the presidential election for the candidate who said he would stop this. And that candidate was Donald Trump. Donald Trump said he would end the war in Ukraine. They pressed him, don't you want Ukraine to win? And he said, no. And he said, no, I want the killing to stop. I'm not concerned about who wins. The American people overwhelmingly voted for Trump because Trump said he would stop this. And so Trump is the president-elect. He's set to take the oath of office on January 20th and become the next president. But that doesn't stop Joe Biden from dumping another $72 billion into Ukraine. $72 billion are going to be dumped into Ukraine. Another $72 billion. And now they're escalating it with the ATACMS missiles. And Russia's like, hey, we're going to retaliate. We're going to respond. And this is all an absolute disaster. And I could be Mr. Negative here, and I could tell you how outraged I am about the situation, how absurd it is. I could go over the details for you, but I'm not going to do that too much tonight because, I mean, I don't feel that it is my responsibility to spread negativity. I don't feel that it is my job to make you more afraid than you already are, make you more resentful than you already are. I think Penny in the chat had the right answer when she said, what the fuck is wrong with our government? Very, very good question. I mean, the fact that they could do this, is absolutely crazy. I'm on here mainly because I understand why this is happening. And I am able to explain why this is happening. And that's why this YouTube channel exists, right? I mean, if you wanted to watch the news, you'd go watch the news. But I'm here to give you ideology, to give you analysis, to give you an understanding of what's going on. And so I'll tell you why it is that the ultra-rich in the United States are committed to a confrontation with Russia. And the reason is this. Russia has lots of oil and gas. And every ounce of oil and every barrel of oil and every ounce of natural gas that they sell is an ounce of oil or natural gas that somebody did not buy from Exxon, Mobil, BP, Shell, or Chevron. That's why. Do you remember when the USA loved Russia? There was a time in my life when the USA and Russia were good buddies, got along very, very well. And in fact, there's a very popular book written about it. It's called The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. The USA loved Russia in the 1990s when Boris Yeltsin was running the place, when it was down for the count and bleeding. when all the factories were shutting down, when it had 30% unemployment, when they were selling off the farms and factories to the highest bidder. During those years, the USA loved Russia. When the economy of Russia was being run by Wall Street corporations who were just looting the place economically, when British Petroleum BP was looting Russia's oil wealth, when Hermitage Capital Management, run by Bill Browder, was violating their laws and stealing from their public. I mean, when there were elderly people outside of every subway station trying to sell you their clothing so they could eat, when there was depopulation going on. Russia's population during the 1990s actually went down by 10%. 10%. That's millions of people either died or left the country because it was just being economically demolished. Well, during those years, the USA got along with Russia great. Why? Because it was not a competitor. It was the opposite of a competitor. It was a captive market. It was a client state. It wasn't selling oil and gas in competition. And in fact, it stopped producing its own stuff, wasn't making its own steel anymore, wasn't growing its own crops anymore. So it had to import everything from the United States and from Western Europe. And when Russia was down for the count and bleeding, the US government loved Russia. And the US government started hating Russia when Putin fixed things, when Russian President Vladimir Putin got elected. And he started restructuring the economy, and he put oil and gas under public ownership, and he started using the oil and gas revenue to rebuild their industrial sector, their mining, their manufacturing. And with state control of oil and gas, Putin was able to rebuild Russia's economy. And suddenly, Russia was no longer a captive market client state down for the count and bleeding. Suddenly, Russia was a competitor. And that's when, all of a sudden, they didn't like Russia anymore. These are the facts. It has nothing to do with human rights. It has nothing to do with corruption. It's got nothing to do with homosexuality. It's got nothing to do with Ukraine. It's got everything to do with profits. It's got everything to do with wealth. It's got everything to do with the huge monopolistic corporations that run the world. That is why Russia is considered an enemy of the United States. And that's why the United States is determined to do everything it can to antagonize Russia, to force Russia into military conflict and situations where it has to spend lots of money to send lots of its citizenry to go die on the battlefield. And it has to fight for itself. It has to battle with existential threats right on its border. That's what this is about. Imperialism, or globalism. Trumpers call it globalism. Lenin called it imperialism. It's monopolistic capitalism, the rule of the world by big banks and corporations that keep themselves rich and make themselves rich by keeping the world poor and making the world poorer. This is imperialism. Imperialism means keeping the world poor, holding back economic development, impoverishing countries so that the big monopolies can stay at the top. And that, I just love this. What is your relationship with Chelsea Gabbard? I've never heard of Chelsea Gabbard. Never heard of her. I don't know a Chelsea Gabbard. So there you go. I'm sure you're not thinking of Chelsea Clinton. She and I are good buddies. Just kidding. Man, Chelsea Gabbard. Anyway, I digress. Imperialism is the rule of the world by big banks and monopolies. And that is what is pushing us into a confrontation with Russia. And imperialism is the reason they hate China as well. when China was a deeply poor country, the sick man of Asia, the USA got along with China just fine. After China was subdued by the British Empire with 2 opium wars, forced to have the British and the French and the Japanese and other imperialist countries seize their economy, the result was China being one of the poorest countries in the world, enduring the century of humiliation at the hands of the Western powers. But the hatred for China began whenever China began to assert its independence. The first time the USA ever sent troops to China was during the Boxer Rebellion in 1900. Why? Because there was a nationalist movement that was going around killing drug dealers and confiscating opium pipes and urging people to boycott Japanese and British products. And because of that, the USA sent the military to China to protect the drug dealers, to protect the dominance of American corporations, and to beat down the Boxers, which were Chinese nationalists. And the reason that the USA hates China is because China used to be one of the poorest countries in the world. Now it's the second largest economy in the world. 800 million people lifted from poverty. The world's largest telecommunications manufacturer. And every phone that people buy from Huawei Technologies is a phone that they did not buy from Apple or Verizon. And furthermore, every ounce of steel that people buy from China, which makes half the steel in the world, is steel they didn't buy from a Wall Street corporation. Every electric car that people buy from China, and China is the world's top electric car manufacturer. Every electric car people buy from China is an electric car they didn't buy from Tesla. I'm just telling you that this is about the dominance of ultra monopolies. This is the dominance of big corporations over the planet. And big sections of the world have broken out of their domination, and they are determined to roll back that independence and beat down these countries. And that is what they are determined to do. It's about holding back economic development and keeping people poor. And that one common misconception people have about imperialism is people think that imperialism brings development. And this is what drives me up the wall. Is I've spent my entire life reading books like The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, reading books like Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism by Lenin, learning to understand all of this stuff. But there is a narrative now that's very common that says that the indigenous people of Africa and South America are beautiful people without technology. And they just live these beautiful, happy lives as noble savages. And the evil Western imperialists come and force them to have electricity and force them to have cell phones, and they take them away from their beautiful indigenous ways. That is the narrative of the movie Avatar. That is the movie. I went and saw a movie with my wife that came out just after Trump was elected, Beatrice at Dinner. That has nothing to do with what imperialism actually is. Newsflash. There are many, many people in Africa who don't have running water and don't have electricity, and they want it. And there are many, many people right now at our border who are from Guatemala and Honduras and parts of Mexico, and they don't have running water and they don't have electricity. And the reason that they've migrated and they're trying to get into the United States is because they would like to have running water and they would like to have electricity. Imperialism doesn't bring these things. Imperialism prevents countries from getting them. The most prosperous country in Central America right now is Nicaragua, the government run by the Sandinistas, and they are a government that has electrified the entire country. And that is why the USA is trying to overthrow it. The Sandinistas have electrified every corner of the country, 98% electrification. They have beautiful paved roads. And as a result, the socialist government of Daniel Ortega is very popular. And the USA, as a result, is trying to overthrow it. Meanwhile, in Honduras, there's big sections of the country where the people don't even speak Spanish, have no access to schools, have no running water, have no electricity. Guatemala is a country that at this point doesn't even have a postal service. It was privatized. Their president, Jimmy Morales, privatized the postal service. And then they ran out of money, and so now they don't have postal services in Guatemala. It is so much of a neoliberal, free market, impoverished country. And big chunks of Guatemala don't have running water and don't have electricity. And as a result, a lot of Guatemalans are trying to get here. This idea that imperialism is development, this is a lie that is promoted first by the imperialists. That's their justification for dominating these countries. Oh, we're bringing development. No, you are not. You are preventing development. You're going there and putting all their domestic companies out of business. You're going there and impoverishing them and forcing them to be a captive market. You're not bringing development, number one. Number two, it's promoted by the woke left. Oh, development is bad. That is their message. Development is bad, and these indigenous people are just so beautiful and magical, and it's bad for Mother Earth when we have development. No, 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 no. Imperialism, the rule of the world by Wall Street and London, holds back economic development. And the entire struggle that defined the 20th century, that defines the 21st century, is the world struggling to break free from imperialism so it can have development. And China broke free and raised 800 million people from poverty. The Sandinistas of Nicaragua broke free and electrified their country and provide universal employment and redistributed the land. They have a farming boom, an agricultural boom. You should see what I saw when I went to Nicaragua. Great achievements in terms of what the socialist economy of Nicaragua has achieved. There's many examples of countries that break out of imperialism in order to develop. And there is an entire industry that has been created of battling against that. And there are many different ways they battle against countries that have broken free from development. One of the main ways is they invade them. Iraq was a country that took control of its oil resources and was selling oil on the international markets in competition with Wall Street and London. So the USA invaded Iraq. It lied to the world about weapons of mass destruction. And it said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which they didn't have. The USA invaded Iraq and killed millions of people and destroyed the country. And now Iraq isn't selling very much oil on the international markets. Some, but about 10% of what they once were. And the country is in chaos and ruin, and it's been a nightmare in Iraq ever since. That was the victory of American imperialism. Libya had broken free from imperialism, seized control of its oil resources, had built the world's largest irrigation system, the Great Man-Made River, had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. And so the USA started funding people in Libya to protest about human rights, and it staged human rights protests against the Libyan government. And that then led to a civil war in the country. And then the United States unleashed a torrent of cruise missiles and bombed and destroyed Libya. And now this country in Africa that once had the highest life expectancy in the African continent is now in utter chaos, and people are drowning in the Mediterranean trying to get out. There's many examples of this, right? That imperialism is about preventing development. And when countries break out of imperialism and start developing, then they become a target. And one of the main ways they get targeted is with liberal NGOs. George Soros and Human Rights Watch and all kinds of nonprofits and foundations fund human rights activism to create instability in countries, to promote feminism in countries, to promote LGBT stuff in countries, and to make countries less stable and to create situations where the government of countries can be violently overthrown. And that liberalism, leftist politics, human rights, protest in the street, fight for justice, that is a huge part of imperialism in our time. And it may sound left, and it may sound progressive, and it may sound like it's concerned about human rights, but the main thrust of what they are doing is they are toppling and destabilizing any government that would assert its independence from Wall Street. That is what they're doing. And this is a global system. And these big ultra monopolies, ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and Chevron, Bank of America, HSBC Bank, General Electric, they dominate the world and hold back development and keep countries impoverished in order to maximize profit for themselves. They want the whole global economy to be centered around themselves so that all the wealth can flow into the hands of one mighty city, one London Stock Exchange, one Wall Street district, financial district. That's what they want. Imperialism is about keeping the world poor. That's imperialism. Imperialism is a global economic system where the rule and monopoly of big banks and corporations is maintained, and the government apparatus, the military, the sanctions, the intelligence agencies, the liberal NGOs, the National Endowment for Democracy, all of these things are weaponized to enforce the imperialist system. If a country breaks free, it becomes a target. And they have developed this whole apparatus to make sure they keep countries under their boots. That is what imperialism is. And we should be absolutely clear about this. Imperialism is keeping the world poor in order to make big bankers rich. That's what imperialism is. Now, there was a time, and I can remember this time, when imperialism benefited most people who lived in the West. Right? And it still kind of does to some degree or other. If you lived in America, you had a higher life expectancy, and you saw your living standards go up. And that was the bribe that bought the loyalty of many people in the Western countries to imperialism. It used to be that there were big factories, big steel plants, big auto plants all over this country, and workers worked in those big steel plants. And those big steel plants and those big auto plants had labor unions in them. And those labor unions were imperialists. They supported wars. They supported beating down and colonizing countries around the world, because that would lead to the monopoly of the corporation. And then they could force the employer to pay bigger wages. And that there was a big section of the American working class and the British working class and the French working class that figured that imperialism worked out pretty well for them. They could get a middle class living, a comfortable living, and they could see their living standards rise as American and British corporations dominated the world. And that phenomenon was referred to as the aristocracy of labor. That there were sections of the working class that were organized into unions that saw a benefit from imperialism. Their living standards increased, and so they became bought off. They got kind of a bribe. And that's especially the height of that was the 1950s, right? In the 1920s, you saw it with the skilled trades in construction and the craft unions and stuff. But in the 1950s, when we talk about that white picket fence and that house and car and the father who works and the wife who doesn't and the 3.5 children, and that was the aristocracy of labor. And that's why they were able to crush the Communist Party during the 1950s, because no one wanted to hear what the Communist Party had to say because living standards were so good. And that the bulk of the American working class benefited from imperialism to the point that they lost any anti-imperialist consciousness. They felt like imperialism was working out pretty well for them. Now, there were always layers of U.S. society to whom this did not apply. The black people, for example. The black people, they weren't getting those good-paying jobs in industry. And it wasn't really until the 1970s that you saw black people start to get jobs in steel mills and auto plants in big numbers. So they were not part of this. And Appalachia, right? The miners in Appalachia, they were certainly exploited. There was a lot of hunger among Appalachians. You go to the rural parts of the South, the textile workers that had no unions, etc. So it wasn't universal. It wasn't universal. But the bulk of the working class of America used to benefit from imperialism. That is not the case anymore. Why? Because they don't need workers at the assembly line like they used to. A steel mill used to hire thousands of people. Now it can hire less than 100 to produce the same amount of steel. The computer revolution has eliminated workers from industry. Book binderies, all these books behind me. Books used to be printed in big giant factories called book binderies. And it used to be that to print a book, you had to print 5,000 copies of it in order for it to be cost effective. If you didn't order at least 5,000 copies of the book, no publisher would print it. None, because it was not cost effective. And books were printed in these big giant binderies, these big giant factories where people printed books all day long. And hundreds of people would work in these giant book binding factories. Now we have print on demand, where a book just kind of pops out. And, they print on demand. One machine can print a book. It requires one worker to push the button or to upload the files into the machine. And with artificial intelligence, etc., you can publish a book. And that's how the world is changing, right? And that as a result, the layer of workers in the imperialist homeland that was the mechanism for keeping stability, that kind of saw their living standards go up as American corporations dominated the world, they are being eliminated. And since the 1980s, we have seen the wages and living standards of the American working class go down. Gradually we've seen the deindustrialization of the country. Industrial jobs are vanishing. Places like Pittsburgh and Gary, Indiana, and Cleveland. In Cleveland, I used to walk through a place called Steel Yards Common. There's a giant Walmart in Cleveland, right? And it used to be where there was a giant steel mill. That steel mill, where people worked and got union wages, was a good paying place. But now it's been replaced with a giant Walmart where people work and get poverty wages. And it's retail. You look at that. I remember I used to walk through Steel Yards Common, and I was very aware of the shift. Once this was a center of the steel industry where thousands of people worked in the steel mill and got paid high union wages. Now this is a giant Walmart and Sam's Club and Home Depot where people get paid poverty wages. And these huge monopolies that have put out of business all the local hardware stores and all the they dominate. And that is the situation that many industrial cities are in, and that we have gotten to the point where American workers' living standards are dropping lower than ever before. The rate of household debt is through the roof. Student debt, credit card debt, mortgage debt. The American people are not making anywhere near what they once made. They can't afford to live. The economy crashed in 2008, you'll remember, because Americans couldn't afford to keep buying homes. They just couldn't afford to keep buying homes like they once did. And so Alan Greenspan had legalized all kinds of predatory lending practices that had previously been illegal to try and keep Americans buying homes. They just couldn't keep buying homes. And so it got to the point that Americans just stopped buying homes. They couldn't afford it. And all the easy credit ripoff schemes fell apart, and that didn't work out. And the economy came to a grinding halt. And why were people homeless? Why was it that you saw tent cities erected in Nevada? Why is it that out in Los Angeles right now, there's a big strip full of tents where homeless people are living? Why? Why is it that you have homeless encampments all over Portland, Oregon? I was just up there. I saw it. Why? Why? I'll tell you why. Because there are too many houses. Now, what sense does that make? Why would people be homeless, Caleb? Because there are too many houses. Well, for the same reason that people are hungry, because there's too much food. Overproduction, or the value crisis, the tendency of the falling rate of profit. Abundance creates poverty. And this is the irrationality of a system where profit dictates production. The more wealth you have, the poorer everybody gets. That doesn't make any sense. If there's more wealth, everyone's wealthier. No. If there's more wealth, then there's less need to hire people to create that wealth. And the easier it gets for them to churn out products, the fewer people that they need to hire. And those that they do hire are much easier to replace. And so they can be paid lower and lower wages. And the computer revolution, artificial intelligence, 3D printers, books being printed on demand, you name it, all of that has created a situation where the need for workers at the assembly line is lower than ever before. The wages that are paid out to the workers that are hired are lower than ever before. And as a result, workers cannot buy the products that are produced. And the products are churned out better and faster than ever. But the people can't afford to buy them. And their ability to buy them is lower than it has ever been. This is the irrationality of the capitalist mode of production. This is the problem of overproduction. And the problem of the capitalist system is not that it has endless growth. And again, that's just like there's so much bullshit out there. This is why I can't be a leftist anymore. I'm not a leftist. I'm not a socialist. I don't even call myself a socialist or a communist anymore because there's so much bullshit out there. Just like the problem with imperialism is not that it brings development, because it doesn't bring development. The problem with capitalism is not that it just creates endless growth. Oh, they want endless growth. They just want more and more. No, the problem with capitalism is that it cannot create endless growth. The problem with capitalism, the problem with production organized for profit, the problem with the free market is that abundance creates poverty. And the more wealth that you create, the less employment there is for people, and abundance creates poverty. And that you have a glut on the market. I've even made a video about it. Right? Here, we'll put the video on. This is a video where I explain this basic mathematical problem. Enjoy. Explain what needs to be explained, what used to be considered Marxism 101, about why it is that our Western capitalist economy is crashing and burning. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to do some math. And I hate math. Do you know why I hate math? Because I grew up in America. I went to public school in the United States of America, so I am going to, at risk of embarrassing myself, because math was never my best subject, I'm going to do some mathematics here on the board for you to explain the problem.
We very much enjoyed Caleb's speech.
So if you are creating a product, right, if you're a factory owner, you're making a product, you are going to need the material through which that product is made, the manufacturing materials. So that'll be A.
The simple equation you put forward to explain the crisis of overproduction and the falling rate of profit.
And you're probably going to need to transport the product to where it's sold. That's B.
It broke down where your money goes.
You're also going to have to pay your labor costs. Labor costs are represented by C.
Explanations of those concepts that people are able to understand.
Then when consumers purchase the product, they're going to pay a final price. And that final price is D. However, there's a problem with that.
I like the fact that he framed it that way to make it very clear.
Which is that the capitalist can't change how much A costs. He can't change how much B costs. So the profit of the capitalist can only be extracted from the value put into it by the worker. And this is the basis of Marxism, the understanding of surplus value.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere. I've never been able to explain it that simply.
So C, the labor value, is divided. You have C1, which is what the worker actually gets paid. And then you have C2, which is the profit that the capitalist makes. And it all adds up to D, which is the final cost of the product. Now, the way people in the United States who talk about Marxism generally talk about this is they say, well, this is unfair. They say the worker is not getting paid the full value of his labor. But they're missing one of the most important points, which is not just that it's unfair and then people argue, well, what about the employer? He put up the money, doesn't he deserve to be? That's all a distraction. Because the important thing to understand is this. C1 is always going to be less than D. The wages paid out to the worker are never enough to buy back the product that he produces. There is always more products created than there are wages paid out to the worker. And this is the built-in problem of capitalism, the problem of overproduction. And it is always there in the capitalist economy. It never goes away. And they have invented all kinds of crazy mechanisms to try and deal with the problem of overproduction. Part of the reason that the US government has purchased billions and billions of dollars worth of cheese only to bury it in a cave in Springfield, Missouri, is to deal with this problem. It is an ongoing present problem, and it's a problem acknowledged by most capitalist economists. John Maynard Keynes said the problem was underconsumption rather than overproduction, but he was pointing to the same problem. The military-industrial complex in the United States is an effort to deal with this problem, to keep spending going. There's all kinds of mechanisms that they've invented to try and resolve this problem, but it gets worse. What is the capitalist always trying to do? He wants to maximize the amount of profit he makes. And one of the main ways they do that is with what's called labor-saving technology. Get rid of workers and replace workers with machines. As they eliminate workers from the process of production, as there's fewer and fewer workers involved, as machines take the place of workers, the role of C in production decreases. There's a little bit of a problem with that. As C goes down, C2 also goes down, right? As C decreases, C2 also decreases. And as the role of the worker in production is reduced, the rate of profit that the capitalist makes goes down. And this is called the tendency of the falling rate of profit. Only human labor creates value. And this is something that Adam Smith acknowledged. This is something some of the popes even acknowledge. Human labor creates all value. And so when you reduce the role of human labor in production, the amount of value created decreases, and the ability of the capitalist to extract surplus value also decreases. So this causes the capitalist to have to churn out even more products because he's making less and less of a profit on the overall product. He's making less and less of a percentage, so he has to churn them out. So this problem of the worker never being able to buy back what he produces and more products being created than are necessary, this problem becomes exacerbated. And this points to what is understood to be the deeply irrational nature of the capitalist system. Now what I just explained there, the problem of overproduction or the value crisis, the fact that abundance creates poverty, it points to all the problems. Inbox me, calebmaupin.net, always available for interviews. It points to the problems of the irrational for-profit system. And the reason that I don't call myself a communist or a socialist anymore, this used to just be common sense, right? What I'm talking about on here, the fact that self-driving cars should be a good thing. But in our irrational economy, it will lead to mass unemployment and riots in the streets. Why should it be a bad thing that we no longer have to have human beings drive cars? Because we have an irrational system where people's value is selling themselves to a boss, and the more abundance there is, the more poverty you get as a result. And the US government buries huge amounts of cheese in a cave just to keep the price of dairy high enough. And that we have a very irrational economic system where abundance creates poverty. People become homeless because there are too many houses. People become hungry because there is too much food. And that we have homelessness, and the U.S. economy crashed because there were too many houses. That the more wealth you create, the poorer everyone gets. That's not rational. That's the problem. We need endless growth. We need an economic system that is rationally organized so that growth can continue without the irrationality of the market. That's the idea, right? The reason I don't call myself a socialist or a communist is because nowadays, socialists and communists, they think growth is bad. You go to any socialist or communist group and they'll say, the problem with capitalism is there's just too much growth. They just want more and more growth. Well, that's not, I You can quibble with me. I can show you what Marx actually wrote. I can show you what communist governments do around the world, but no one cares to listen to me, and the same with imperialism. Imperialism is keeping countries poor. That's what it's about. It's about impoverishing countries. However, if you go to talk to any socialists or communists, they'll tell you, well, imperialism is about forcing beautiful indigenous people to have electricity, and it's about, consuming Mother Earth and making people use modern technology. And that, again, imperialism is actually about keeping people in poverty, but nobody wants to talk about this, right? And socialism and communism in our time has turned into nothing but a disgusting counter gang for the ultra rich. They want to keep countries around the world poor, and they want to do so in the name of environmentalism, in the name of human rights, in the name of LGBT, in the name of whatever, but they're going to keep countries poor, and they want you to be poorer, and they're going to make you poorer. And why are you going to be poorer? Because you're a racist white person. You're a racist white person. You deserve to be poorer because you're bad, or you're using up too much resources for the environment. The communism and socialism, Antifa, the Communist Party, the Party of Socialism and Liberation, all of these groups, they work for the ultra rich, and they are anti-growth. And all the countries around the world that are battling imperialism, Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, they all have fought to break free from imperialism so they can have growth. They want economic growth, and they have adopted rationally planned economies so they can have growth. So there's this other movement out there that calls itself socialism and communism, and I am against it. I am against it. And I am not going to sit there and waste my time trying to tell working people who are also against it for very good reasons that I'm the real communist. Not doing that anymore. No, I'm not going to waste my time with that nonsense, right? I believe in economic growth. And so do all the working class people who voted for Trump. I believe in economic growth, and so do they. I also am opposed to regime change wars and instability. And I'm opposed to destabilizing countries and trying to spread human rights by overthrowing governments. I'm opposed to a confrontation with Russia. I'm opposed to U.S. aid to Israel. I'm opposed to confrontation with China and Iran. And all that is done with woke language that is all repeated by the stupid socialists and communists. Oh yeah, China has billionaires. They can't be communist because communism means poverty. And it's like, no, I'm done. I am done with those people. I'm really, really done with them. I'm really, really done with them. Right? There is this movement out there of very evil people, and I would argue that the left, wokeism, is the main danger right now. It's very clearly the main danger right now because at one point, Americans benefited from imperialism, but those days are over, and our living standards are going down, and our country is becoming even more impoverished. 27 different states are unpaving the roads at this point. We have got power grids that collapse. A few years ago in Texas, the power grid collapsed. Hundreds of people died because the power grid just completely fell apart. It's in such disrepair. In Flint, Michigan, people were drinking lead in their water. There's so many examples of our country is just completely falling apart. And who are the biggest supporters of that? The socialists and communists. It deserves to be poor. Everyone's racist and settler, and this country should be destroyed and given back to the Native Americans. It's an evil racist country. So I want to fight against those people because we need to do the exact same thing the Chinese have done, the exact same thing the Russians have done, and the Cubans and the Venezuelans and the Iranians have done. We need to kick imperialism out of America. We need to kick the Wall Street monopolists out of America. That is what we need to do. We need to smash the power of the ultra rich and smash the power of the big monopolies. And instead of bombing countries around the world, instead of dumping $72 billion into Ukraine, we take the money and we pay for our roads and we pay for our power plants and we pay to purify the water that our children drink. And we pay for decent schools and universities and we invest in our people and in our population. That's what we do. And I used to think that was called socialism and communism, but I have been informed by all the socialists and communists, that means you're a Nazi. If you think that, you're a Nazi. So there you go. I mean, I'm telling you, the biggest supporters of imperialism are the communists and socialists, right? They are the biggest supporters of it. right now. And it doesn't even make any sense because all the anti-imperialist governments, most of them have some kind of Marxist or socialist background. It doesn't make any sense. But working people know the communists and socialists are their enemies, right? Because working people want their wages to go up, and the communists go around telling them, you're entitled, you're racist, you deserve to be poorer. And working people don't want to spend billions of dollars on arming Ukraine, and the socialists and communists tell them, oh, Putin's a fascist dictator and he rigged our elections, and oh, we got to stand with the poor Ukrainians, and if you don't agree, you're anti-gay, you know? And so I am at the point where, I don't call myself a socialist or a communist. I call myself an innovationist. I believe in the most American thing that exists, and that's called innovation. The idea that human beings are creative creatures, and with our brilliance and creativity, we're constantly reinventing our relationship with our environment, and that if we had a rationally organized economy designed to create endless growth and unleash human creativity, we could build a whole new world. And that is the struggle. How do we maximize and unleash human creativity? How do we fight for a government of action that fights for working families? How do we do that? That's what I'm for. I'm for a government of action that fights for working families. I am for growth and expansion. I want a society where technology expands and abundance is created and we all get wealthier in the process, where there's no more a contradiction between technological advancement and abundance and human living standards and the living standards of the population. I want a rationally organized economy. That is what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting to eliminate the rule of profits. I'm fighting to eliminate our society where the irrationality of the market and the greed of the big monopolies is grinding the world into greater and greater poverty, setting up a low-wage police state and marching us toward World War III. I am opposed to the emerging low-wage police state. I am opposed to the march toward World War III. And I am opposed to the people that are trying to shove it down our throats, many of whom call themselves woke. Almost all of them call themselves woke, and many of whom call themselves socialists and communists. I'm against those folks, and I am for a better life for working people. That's what I'm for, and I'm for a rationally organized economy, and I am for defeating imperialism. And that's what I'm for. And that is what we are for at the Center for Political Innovation. We are against imperialism. It is the imperialist monopolies that are destroying our communities and driving down our living standards. It's the imperialist monopolies that are setting up a low-wage police state and sending the FBI to kick down our doors because we posted the wrong thing on Twitter. I am against the emerging low-wage police state that is being created by the big monopolies. I am also against the big monopolies marching us toward World War III with Russia in order to maximize their profits. I am against it, and I am with the American people in their millions who voted against this by voting for Donald Trump because they saw Trump as somebody that these big monopolies tried to kill to prevent from getting into office. And, Donald Trump doesn't agree with me on a lot of things, and there's plenty of room for criticism, but his movement at this time represents the main force of opposition to the big monopolies. And it's where all the Americans that are opposed to the power of the big monopolies are, and that's where I want to be. That's where I want to be. I want to be with those Americans. I don't want to be having an argument with them about what communism and socialism really means. And I definitely don't want to be with the motherfucking communists anymore. The communists who hate working people, the communists who want to destroy the living standards of working people, who want to drive down living standards, who think American working class people are the enemy, who think that the working people here deserve to be poorer, who oppose development around the world, who are working with the CIA to destabilize countries in the name of human rights. I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't care what you call yourselves. You're wrong, you folks. And in America right now, you call yourself socialist. You call yourself communist, but you're advocates of degrowth and you want to impoverish people. You're advocates of CIA regime change and propaganda to justify war and sanctions against countries. I'm not part of you anymore. I am with the small business owner. I am with the working class people in their neighborhoods. I am with the people across America who don't want to be degrown, they don't want to live in a police state, and they don't want World War III. I am in opposition to the socialists, the communists, the globalists, the woke people. I am for a government of action that fights for working families. And this is difficult for me because I have read the books and I've been to the countries. I've been to Russia. I've been to the headquarters of the Russian Communist Party. I've met Gennady Zyuganov, the leader of the Russian Communist Party. I have met the Communist Party of Russia's presidential candidate. I met him. Not just Gennady Zyuganov, but I also met Pavel Grudinin, who was their presidential candidate in 2018. And I've been to Iran, and I've been to Nicaragua, and I've been to Venezuela, and I've been to global communist youth gatherings. And I know that around the world, there are many governments that have emerged in the name of socialism and communism that want something very different than what these freaks in America want. That doesn't change the fact that these evil people, this evil movement in America, this evil movement calls itself socialism and communism. I am against that evil movement. I am against degrowth. I am against human rights NGOs that destabilize countries. I am against impoverishing American working families. I am against the police state. I am against the FBI because the FBI murdered Fred Hampton. The FBI murdered all kinds of anti-imperialist activists. The FBI raided the homes of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Jesse Neville and Penny Hess, the leaders of the People's Democratic Uhuru movement, and has charged them with being Russian agents. I've been going to their court dates and supporting them. I'm headed to Florida again to support them. I am actually against imperialism. I'm actually against the FBI. I'm actually against the big monopolies, and the left is not. And the woke people are not. They claim they're anti-racism. Well, that's great. You're against a feeling. You're against a sentiment. But when the FBI raided the homes of black revolutionaries, where were you? Didn't see you. Oh, you're against racism. Good, good. You know, you read White Fragility. Oh, good for you. But where were you when Penny Hess and Jesse Neville and Chairman O'Malley got their homes raided by the FBI? Oh, you didn't support them. Who did? Tucker Carlson supported them. Tucker Carlson is more of a supporter of black liberation than any socialist or communist, any of these idiots walking around, bragging about Assata Shakur these days. And let me add that we just have to go and do it. We just have to go and do it. And for the longest time, I've had a joke that I've told. And it actually goes something like this. And the joke is that there is a man, a wealthy lawyer in New York City, and he has a dream. And in the dream, he hears what he believes to be the voice of God. And the voice says to him, hire a communist to work at your law firm. And so he wakes up the next morning and he goes and puts out an ad. I need a communist to work at my law firm. First, he hires someone from the Communist Party USA, hires him to work at his law firm. He takes him to a room where he's got a whole bunch of old papers and he says, file these papers. He comes back at the end of the day and he finds the guy just sitting there. And he says, what? You haven't filed the papers. And the guy says, of course I haven't filed the papers. Trump just won the election. Republicans are going to take control of Congress. Now we've got to focus on defeating the ultra-right. We've got to focus on defeating the Republicans. But maybe if we get a Democrat in office in 4 years and we get control of Congress, maybe then we could start to possibly talk about filing the papers. But right now, we just got to defeat the Republicans. And he's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're fired. Hire somebody else. So he hires a member of a Trotskyite group and a member of a Maoist group. And he says, all right, you guys are gonna file the papers. And he goes back at the end of the day and they're not there and some of the papers are missing. So he goes outside and he sees them out on the street trying to sell the papers to people that are walking by. And he says, what are you doing? And he says, we're selling the papers, just like we always do. He said, I didn't ask you to sell the papers. I want you to file the papers. Oh, you guys are crazy. So the next, he decides to hire a really popular communist or socialist from social media. He finds a really popular streamer or YouTuber, someone who's really well known on the internet for being a communist. And he's like, all right, that's the guy. This guy will know how to file the papers. And so he goes away and he comes back at the end of the day. The papers are still not filed. but the popular YouTuber is on there, and they start talking about, so and so, come dumpster 43. That guy's totally like a fascist dude, and it's based. And I was working out the other day, and like I had sex with like 5 women the other night. It was just so amazing. And oh, by the way, this law firm I work at, they only represent transgender indigenous people and no law enforcement. And the guy's like, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, man, this is the revolution. I'm streaming. I'm telling everyone how based I am and he says, this is ridiculous. What does this have to do? Why didn't you file the papers? You're fired. Fires the guy. So next, he hires somebody from the Party of Socialism and Liberation. And he says to them, go and file the papers. So he goes away. He comes back at the end of the day. Papers are not filed. There's a leaflet sitting on the desk. And it says, rally in Times Square to file the papers. And he's like, oh, God, please, no, please, no. And so he goes to Times Square and he sees like 60 people. And they've all got signs, perfectly made signs that are yellow and black and perfectly made. And the signs all say, file the papers. And there's a crowd of people and they're all chanting, file the papers, file the papers, file the papers. And then a Palestinian gets up and says, the fight to file the papers is also the fight for Palestine. And everyone goes, yay. And the guy's like, oh, God. And then a transgender person gets up and they're like, the fight for transgender bathrooms is the fight to file the papers. And everyone's like, yay. And he walks up to him and he says, what is wrong with you communists? I found 4 different communists, 4 different types of communists. And I gave you the very simple task of filing the papers. And none of you could do it. And the guy from PSL gets this very angry look on his face. Very angry look on his face. He says, how dare you? How dare you compare me to all the other groups? All the other people, they just talked about filing the papers. But we're the only group that actually did something. So there you go. That is a joke I have told on these streams since the beginning. That was pretty early on. You go back to some of the earliest streams, I told that joke. But it still rings true. All right? There's a very simple task that urgently needs to be done, and that is to build an anti-imperialist movement in America. File the papers is a stand-in for building an anti-imperialist movement in America. And none of these communist groups can do it. None of them can do it. They're too busy fighting the Republicans. They're too busy selling newspapers. They're too busy streaming and getting into Twitter fights with each other. They're too busy, having stupid rallies about whatever the latest trendy liberal cause is. None of them want to actually build an anti-imperialist movement. Well, I am here to build an anti-imperialist movement. And you know what? I will just say this. There's a lot of people who've been waiting. They've been waiting. They've been saying, oh my goodness, there's got to be somebody who will come along and just do it and just build the movement that I can join. And I've been waiting, and I joined this communist group and it sucked, and I joined that communist group and it sucked, and I'm frustrated, and this country needs leadership. Here I am. Here we are. Take it or leave it. And that's the thing. We're right here. We're right here. And if you want to know who is the real deal of anti-imperialism, it is the innovationist movement. It is the Center for Political Innovation. And I can tell you how you can know that we're real. Number one, right? If we were fake, they would be making it a lot more easy for us. There'd be thousands of people watching right now. We'd be broadcast and promoted everywhere and all of that. But we're not. They do everything they can to suppress us because they don't want you to know about me. And that's one way that you can know that I'm real. And if you look at the amount of character assassination I have personally been subjected to, you look at the amount of demonization, you look at how all of these fake communist groups, the first thing they ask when people join, not exaggerating, the first thing they ask you when you join the Communist Party, do you know are you connected to Caleb Maupin? Are you connected to him? Thank you. He's bad. He's bad. You can't be connected to him. The reason that they are desperate to inoculate people against me, desperate to suppress me on social media and all of that, is because I'm real. I'm the real deal. And the other thing the other reason that you can know that we are real is because I have been doing this a long fucking time. This is going to be live stream 834. 834. I have streamed on this channel live 834 times. I have been doing this since I was a teenager. I've been in different organizations. I worked for Ramsey Clark. I went to Iran and made a documentary. I risked my life on a ship delivering medical aid to Yemen. I have been to Russia. I've reported from international conferences. I've led delegations to 3 different international youth festivals of anti-imperialists. I have done a lot. And if I was going to give up and go away because it just got to be too hard, I would have done it by now. But I haven't. I'm in this for the long haul. There's no excuse for not joining. Right? And you can say, "Oh, that sounds so arrogant, and that sounds so self-important." I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect. Not saying that I'm flawless. I'm saying I'm real. And I don't see anybody else out there who is. And if you want to do some real shit, do it with us. You go to the CPI website. You go to the CPI website and you look at About, the About page. You click About Us. And you go and you read all the things that we have done. Go and read it. Go and read all the things that we have done. We're doing it. We're doing it. We get stuff done in this group. We are actually doing it. No one's done anywhere near the amount of work that we have done for the Uhuru movement. No one has done anywhere near the amount of anti-imperialist work that we have done. We're doing it. We're actively doing it with our small organization, with our limited resources. We are doing it. And if you really believe in these principles and you really believe in anti-imperialism, you need to be with us. You need to join our organization, and the door is here. I am here. I am the one you've been waiting for. Right? I have obviously been chosen for some reason to be the guy who does this, as weird as this sounds, right? As weird and awkward as I might be, as weird as my life story has been, I obviously am here to do this. I'm obviously been assigned by history to play this role, because if not, somebody else would be doing it. And it just seems like common sense to me. What I'm doing doesn't seem that profound. It doesn't seem like, I feel like I'm doing what is just basic. I'm doing what anybody else should be doing, but nobody else is doing it. And that says to me that I've been assigned, I've been chosen to do this. And it sucks, honestly. It sucks sometimes. Sometimes it's great, but other times it can really suck. If I could just go along and get along, I would have done it. I was in a communist group for 8 years, and I just couldn't be in the group anymore. And I really wished that I could just conform and go along with it, but I just couldn't. And, I have been the target of all kinds of things. And I see, and I'm the target of the American government. I'm surveilled, and I'm on about 1 million lists. And, I would really like to be able to just get along, to just be a face in the crowd, but I can't do it. I have obviously been assigned this role, right? And you can get all spiritual about it, and you can ask yourself why. I'm here, and I'm gonna keep doing this, and I'm not gonna go away, and I'm gonna keep doing this because this is what I have to do. And if I was gonna stop, if I could stop, I would have done it by now. And if I was a fraud, they would be boosting me like crazy because they love frauds. They absolutely love frauds because frauds are not a change. I'm the real deal. I'm the real deal. And if you don't want to acknowledge that, you're not being honest with yourself. And part of the reason that I am the real deal is because of the fact that I want to help other people. And this is something that I do not understand for the life of me. All my life, I've been in various political groups, and it's always one person's ego trip. It's always one person's ego trip, and they're trying to silence everybody else around them, right? Oh, shut up so I can get the center of attention. I do not do that. I am constantly boosting other people, and I'm constantly seeing other people who have talent and understand these ideas who don't want to do anything about it, right? And I'm constantly saying to other people, you need to do more. I'm constantly encouraging other people to write more, encouraging other people to speak more, trying to give other people platforms, trying to boost other people, you know? And I don't get it. And I see a lot of people that have way more potential. And they just get stuck here. This is where they get stuck. Old man yells at cloud. This is what social media reduces people to being. Old man yells at cloud, right? The world is not good. So I have my social media account, and I just complain about it all day long, and that's my contribution. Well, I'm here to tell you. I am here to tell you you don't have to be old man yells at cloud. You can actually play a role in history. You can actually take history into your own hands and try to change the world. You can actually do something. And if you look at About Us and if you read the timelines on there, you can see all the amazing stuff we have actually done as an organization. We were out in front of Donald Trump's, big Madison Square Garden rally with a huge banner of Trump and Kim Jong-un together that said, "Only peace can make America great again." And we got mentioned in the New Yorker magazine. It was amazing what we did. Amazing, right? We wrote a book. We published a book about Kamala Harris, and they banned it from Amazon, and then it exploded and thousands of people read it. And so we organized our members, and we went to the Democratic National Convention. We handed out 1,000 copies of our book at the Democratic National Convention as a way to raise awareness about who Kamala Harris really was and how she was groomed by the more warlike and the ultra-imperialist factions of our ruling class. We did it. We're doing it. We're actually doing it. We're filing the papers. And other people are not. Other people are tearing each other down on the internet. Other people are campaigning for the Democrats. Other people are having stupid liberal rallies about the latest trendy liberal cause. Other people are doing all kinds of other stuff. Jimmy Dore saw us. Yeah, we were at his show. Jimmy Dore was holding one of our books even. Jimmy Dore saw us. Jimmy Dore has had us on many times. We talked about our book on his show. I've been on Jimmy Dore's show twice, 3 times at least. I've been mentioned many times. I've been on as a guest twice. We do stuff, right? We do stuff. We get stuff done. We're building an organization, and we're doing it. And, sometimes it's funny. And yeah, we've been on George Galloway before. Love George Galloway. Good friend. He's sharing our video of our letter to Trump. We just wrote a letter to Donald Trump. And we're sending that letter to everybody. So are pseudonyms allowed in CPI? Yeah, of course. Are we gonna that's not your real name, you're banned. Of course, you can call yourself whatever you want. You'll need to pay your dues, sign up, but the way you join CPI is you join on our website and join CPI, and from there, you sign up, and if you want to be called a different name or you want to wear a ski mask or whatever you want to do, that's fine. But yeah, we need people to join our organization, and we need to build, and we are mobilizing right now for the inauguration. And, I'm going to give you all a little preview. There's an article going to come out pretty soon, right? Well, I'm not going to say too much about it. Let me just put it this way. The NATO intelligence agencies that want to continue the war in Ukraine are planning to interfere on Inauguration Day. And we have some information about that. And that information will go up online very soon. And, I'm not pulling any punches at this point. you know, I just, I, you know, you just have to just tell it like it is. And, yeah, the French intelligence, British intelligence is going to interfere in Trump's inauguration. They're using certain people to do that. And there's going to be some information we publish about that soon. Again, there's a reason we don't call ourselves socialists and communists anymore, because socialists and communists are not anti-imperialist. So, yeah, I'll say that much. But, you know, our letter to Donald Trump, we're figuring about buying an ad in the Washington Times, printing the full text of it in the Washington Times. We have reserved a space. We're having an event in DC on Inauguration Day. We're going to be at the inauguration. We're doing a lot. We're getting a lot done because we urgently need to build an anti-imperialist movement in this country. Friday, we're doing an all-day mega stream to kind of promote the group, bonding, fun activities. It's going to be good stuff. We're doing a lot at this point. We're doing a lot. And there's a lot of work that urgently needs to be done. There's a lot of work that urgently needs to be done. And we are doing it. You know, and that's that. So join the Center for Political Innovation. Ultimately, we need to build an anti-monopoly coalition because the bulk of the American people, the overwhelming majority, would benefit from the overthrow of imperialism. The working class, the small business owners, even the lower level capitalists. It is the imperialists that are the enemy, and we need to build an anti-monopoly coalition. All of the people throughout U.S. society that would benefit from destroying the power of the big monopolies need to band together. We need to build an anti-monopoly coalition. In order to do that, we need to lay out an agenda for what a government that kicked the ass of Jeff Bezos and ExxonMobil and BP and Shell and Chevron and benefited working people and their neighborhoods, benefited small business owners would look like, right? We need to put out a program for how we could improve things. That's what our 4-point economic plan is. It is a vision of what an anti-monopoly government would like, a government that fought against the big monopolies, a government that fought against their war drive and their low-wage police state. What would that look like? How could we build a government of action that fights for working families? And that's what we are doing. That's what we are doing. So there you go. That's what I've got for you. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. But we're doing it. We're getting it done. And we're not going to stop. And all of the efforts to convince me to stop are have failed, and they will fail. I will just keep doing what I am doing. I am committed to the cause of anti-imperialism. I love my country. I love humanity. I do not want to see their high-tech dark ages unfold. I am committed to a new America for working families, and I won't back down on this, and I won't surrender. And yeah, there you go. You know, that's just how it is, right? We've got this booklet we wrote, Do You Believe in Growth? Why U.S. Society, why Russia and China keep rising while U.S. society stifles innovation. We've got a lot of amazing stuff that we've done, and we just keep going. We never back down. We don't surrender. We are dedicated to this project. We are dedicated to this project. But anyhow, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? We'll do the roll call. I see we got a good 3 questions here. I'll answer them. Very, very good. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Sorry, I keep touching my nose. It's itching, allergies. It is what it is. Names and locations. Who's with us? All right. We've got Anthony, the New Jersey Sorelian, Ryan in Kansas City, Dan, DT Los Angeles, QC in Quebec in Los Angeles, Southwest Missouri, Lawrence Johnson in Chicago, Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Names and locations. Saviero in Mexico. Welcome. Alex in Brazil. Welcome. Ian in the Yukon, Bendigo, Australia, David Fox, Anthony in Detroit, Copenhagen, Denmark. Welcome. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. Who's with us? Who's with us? Jenny in Cincinnati. Welcome, Jenny. Good to have you, as always. Anthony in Detroit. Worldwide, Daniel. Welcome. Good to have you with us. Good to have you with us. Anybody else? Names and locations, names and locations. I see SW in Missouri on Rumble. Southwest Missouri, JDL. Sammy in Siberia. That's pretty far away, Sammy. Names and locations, names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations, names and locations. Jacob in Wisconsin. Welcome, Jacob. Good to have you. Sammy in Denmark. The ancient city of Cadiz in the south of Spain. Very, very good. All right. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to put on our letter that we wrote to Donald Trump. I do need you to share this letter with as many people as possible. The links are in the description, but I will drop them in the chat just so you have them, because I really, really want you to share this letter with everyone. It's the Twitter video version is doing very well. It's been shared by a lot of people. You know, it's very, very widespread. Hold on, let me just get you that link. It's doing very, very well on Twitter. So please go ahead and share it on Twitter. We'll see where we're at. Yeah, we're at this point. It has been shared on Twitter 188 times, and it has been viewed 74,000 times. That's very, very good. It's also, we do have the link to share share the text on our website, which has been widely viewed. So you can share on the website. Very good. Very, very good. And look at our website. You have the text of it written out, etc. And you can also share on YouTube. In the YouTube video. Share on YouTube, right? Very good. You can share on YouTube. Share on YouTube. But we really need this video to be seen by as many people as possible, to show them what it is that we're doing. Show them what CPI is all about. We have a very unique message in our time, and we've got to defeat imperialism, globalism, and we've got to build a government of action that fights for working families. The video has been viewed 2.5 thousand times on YouTube, along with 74,000 times on Twitter. It's getting around. I mean, we made our video, so please share our video. We really would appreciate it. Really would appreciate it if you'll share it around. I'm going to put it on so you get a chance to see it. After that, I will answer questions. If you got a question, send it to Rumble on the Rumble rant. Send a Rumble rant on the Rumble, or send a super chat on YouTube, and I'll answer people's questions. Very good. All right. Just pulling up the letter. All right, we'll put it on.
Official. CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president.
Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House.
A sweeping and stunning victory, unlike any in our history.
Donald Trump has won the presidency for a second time.
Donald Trump, a convicted felon who survived 2 assassination attempts, making a remarkable comeback to become the next president of the United States.
He's so evil! Nazi! Break out the boat!
It was a terrible night.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Dear President Donald Trump, we've all spent the last year being told Donald Trump can never win again.
But as we went and spoke with regular voters,
that's never been what they seem to think.
As we predicted, you won.
Because the system that dominates the world, the system these people live in, is in complete crisis.
Imperialism, the old order of the world ruled by big banks and monopolies, is becoming more unstable by the day.
It is relentlessly driving working families' living standards down
and pushing us towards new wars.
Americans voted for you because you promised peace.
You promised peace.
You promised peace.
They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
Americans voted for you because you promised swift government action to improve their lives.
Together we can truly make America great again for all Americans. African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, Arab American, Muslim American. Success is going to bring us together.
Americans voted for you because you promised to protect our freedoms.
We want to have security. We want to have things be good, safe. I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve.
Americans voted for you because you promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
You promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
To the rich and the greedy.
You promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
And put the people's needs first.
And put our needs first.
I want you to imagine how much better our future can be if we declare independence from the elites who led us from one financial and foreign policy disaster to another.
While many exclusively focus on the negative realities of a political campaign, we remember your Quantum Leap speech, where you rolled out some extraordinary ideas for completely rebuilding this country.
Past generations of Americans pursued big dreams and daring projects that once seemed absolutely impossible. They transformed American life with the interstate highway system. Magnificent it was. And they launched a vast network of satellites into orbit all around the Earth. But today, our country has lost its boldness. Under my leadership, we will get it back in a very big way. Our objective will be a quantum leap in the American standard of living.
We're writing this letter to let you know who we are.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political
The Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
We're innovationist
and anti-imperialist.
We are patriotic Americans
who want to see the power of Wall Street and London defeated.
And a whole new America rebuilt on new foundations.
We exposed Kamala Harris and how dangerous she was back in 2020 with a book called Kamala Harris and the Future of America.
The book was on sale for 4 years without incident.
Then the very day she became the nominee, on July 22nd, Amazon banned our book without explanation.
They did not want people to hear the truth about her awful record. They did not want people to see how she was tied to the regime change apparatus and how she had been carefully groomed by the malevolent forces that ran the Hillary Clinton State Department.
Amazon banned our book for 7 days. Banning our book backfired. Many thousands of copies sold from July to November as people hungered for the truth about the woman we called the most dangerous presidential candidate in history.
We are proud to have spread truth about Kamala Harris and who she really is.
In the final month before the election, we were on the streets of New York City with a huge banner that said, "Only peace can make America great again."
We highlighted what we consider to be your greatest moment in your first term as president when you offered a hand of friendship to North Korea.
Our organization gives voice to what the overwhelming majority of Americans want.
Jobs, schools, economic development, and, most of all, an end to all the wars.
While many of your biggest supporters are tied to Israel, as a matter of basic human morality, you must stop the slaughter in Gaza.
As the president, you will have the power to cut off the money. The $18 million of our tax money that goes into Israel every day is $18 million too much.
You have the power to stand up to Netanyahu and the Israel lobby.
And the overwhelming majority of your supporters will back you in doing so.
You can end the war in Ukraine as well as you have promised to do.
Russia is ready to sit down with you and make a deal.
You can lift the sanctions that are devaluing the U.S. dollar.
You can cut off the billions of dollars in tax money that has been dumped into death and destruction.
There's an explosion of economic growth happening in Eurasia right now.
China's Belt and Road Initiative, Russia's Eurasian Economic Union, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS
are all full of new wealth being generated as people rise out of poverty with electrification, railway, and new living conditions.
America can get in on the action, and you can create a legacy of growth and prosperity by pushing to make it happen.
That money and technological progress doesn't need to be for everyone but us.
A share can come to our communities across the heartland and south that have been devastated by the globalist monopolies.
America can join the new world of growth and optimism and leave behind the dying world of globalist bankers.
A big step toward making that happen would be fulfilling the vision first put forward by one of Abraham Lincoln's advisors.
Build the Peace Bridge, connecting Alaska to the Russian Far East. Building that bridge over the Bering Strait would create millions of jobs and connect the United States to the wave of economic expansion happening in that region.
You also have the power to step in and protect Americans from the deep state.
You can make Facebook, YouTube, and other social media outlets stop censoring Americans who speak up.
You can free Ross Ulbricht. You can free Leonard Peltier.
We have paid particular attention to the Uhuru Three, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, and Omali Yeshitela.
Tucker Carlson highlighted their case in his program.
As part of the liberal Russia, Russia, Russia hysteria, they got charged with being foreign agents for their work building economic development among black people in Florida and Missouri.
You can pardon them for the absurd conspiracy conviction they received after being acquitted of the primary charge of being Russian agents.
You can repeal the absurd Foreign Agents Registration Act, a vaguely worded law
used to prosecute those who want to change U.S. foreign policy or do business overseas.
We know you can't do this alone. If you do, as you have promised, and clash with the deep state and the big monopolies,
you'll soon realize that there is one ally you desperately need: the American people.
The bulk of the population, those who voted for you because they just can't take it anymore, need to be pushed into action.
The American people are like a sleeping lion that can awaken and roar louder than ever when the time is right.
The country needs a mass movement. It's happened before, and it will happen again.
We defeated the British Empire. We smashed the slaveocracy of plantation owners. We built the labor unions and won women the right to vote. We ended the Vietnam War, and we destroyed legal segregation.
The changes that the overwhelming majority of the American people want will not come about as a result of some savior in the White House.
No matter how adept of a political leader you might be.
The masses of people in their millions are the makers of history.
And it will take an upsurge of democratic participation to bring about what this country really needs.
A government of action.
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 To fight for working families.
You are in a very important position as arguably the most powerful person in the world right now.
President of the United States.
We urge you to stop the emerging low-wage police state. We urge you to stop the march towards World War III.
We urge you to help energize and mobilize a population to assert their will over the greed of the rich and powerful.
We're building a movement of anti-imperialists here in America.
People who love their neighborhoods, cities, and communities and see that protecting them is more urgent now than ever.
We consistently look to the future optimistically and see many promising possibilities in your re-election.
However, as with all politicians, especially presidents, we cannot and will not offer blind support.
Our goals are peace and prosperity for all, and we won't hesitate to criticize you if you stand in the way.
Millions and millions of working families are counting on you, Donald.
Not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
Find the strength within yourself and your relationship with God to be the hero the world desperately needs.
It may not be your first instinct, and it may even fly in the face of much of what you've said, believed, and even promised.
But it is a surefire way to find your name imprinted in the history books for centuries.
We train our members to understand the world and how it works. More importantly, how to change things.
You will hear a lot from us in the next 4 years.
And if and when you stand up to the forces of darkness and empire, we will always have your back. See you at the inauguration. So go ahead and join our organization. I'm going to start answering people's super chat questions, Rumble Rant questions first. If you got any more, send them my way. So the Rumble Rants, we got a lot of them that came in at the beginning. Hempcar says, there's a guy on Rockfin that says CPTPPTPPBRI all overlap with one another and are part of the New World Order. It seems to me the USA hegemony is the real bulwark to peace. Well, I mean, New World Order is a phrase that George Herbert Walker Bush used as the time of the fall of the Soviet Union. It was like a catchphrase. He said, "There's a new world order." And actually, if you look at an American dollar bill, it says New Order of the Ages in Latin, I think, on an American dollar bill. It's just a phrase. And then a lot of people that are more in the conspiracy universe use that phrase to refer to globalism. I mean, in the 90s, you had a rise of like the militia movement, people like that. And that, they are not they were not like, they didn't have a Marxist background, but they were opposed to the big corporations. Like there was the ranchers, right? You remember the Clive and Bundy, that whole thing. And, and then there was that, like, what is it? That facility in Oregon that was seized. And that there's always been a layer of like militia people, like ranchers, people like that, that are against the American government from kind of a libertarian perspective. A lot of the farmland in the West is owned by them. Those folks tend to be far right, is the term that I would use. These are lower level capitalists. A lot of them are maybe millionaires. Not all of them, though. A lot of them are wealthy. They own a lot of land, but they're really at odds with the government. And that, there's federal lands out there and et cetera. And they have a push and pull with them. And the whole, in the 90s, there was the whole thing with Ruby Ridge. And then there was the Waco incident. And and more recently you had Clive and Bundy, and that there's a layer of those kind of conservative rancher guys that, even though they have a decent amount of money and they are capitalists, I mean, they own tracts of land that they make money from, they don't work it themselves, they're kind of business owners. They're at odds with the government, and they're at odds with the rich. They're at odds with the federal lands, the federal land management, and them are always fighting with each other. There's fires that start and they blame them on each other, and their cattle will graze on federal lands. And there's fights that they have. They're also at odds with big agribusiness too, right? Big agribusiness owns a lot of the land, and it's a whole big thing, right? It's an ongoing thing. And again, these are people we need to know more about that could be part of an anti-monopoly coalition. I don't dismiss them. I don't think that they're concerns. One of these big standoffs that happened, the issue, if I remember correctly, it was like during the final years of Obama, was that these two guys, they'd been accused of lighting a fire on federal lands, and they maintained their innocence, but they were jailed for doing it. And they were released from jail, and then a new judge came in and said, no, I'm going to send them back to jail. And so they had come home to their families already, and they were taken back to jail. So their relatives went out and protested. And at the time, I said, hey, these people ideologically, they may not be correct, but, they have a correct grievance. And all these people lost their minds at me. Oh, my God, you're supporting right-wingers. It was wild. It was pretty wild. All right. Thomas Barnett, a Pentagon war hawk, says China will get old before they get rich. Well, they're already quite rich. He said the Perdana Peace Conference wealth will go to working people, China to Africa and the Middle East. Well, I don't know what that means. China's already getting rich. I mean, there's a millionaire created there every day. So And I mean, China is teaming up with a lot of African countries to rise up out of poverty. There's the Belt and Road, China-Pakistan economic corridor. There's a boom in the Russian Far East with a lot of Russian businessmen are tied in with a lot of Chinese businessmen. I mean, the Vladivostok Economic Forum. I've been over there. I went to the Yalta Economic Forum in 2018. I've seen these things. So, I mean, there is a new economy in the world, and the only future America has is joining that new economy. And we are led by a group of monopolistic imperialists that are determined to keep their position at the top of the world, and they don't care if America just completely falls as a result, and we've got to oppose them. So there you go. There, we got to become part of this new economy so that we can get some of that wealth ourselves. How do we know these bankers and war criminals won't evade justice? I think that they are evading justice. I mean, very, very much. The Nazis didn't lose. They switched sides under paperclip. Could BRICS sell out and continue the World Economic Forum agenda? Well, no, because there is a fundamental opposition there. Right? The economic system that the World Economic Forum is promoting and the economic system that the BRICS is promoting are fundamentally at odds with each other, right? One is based on real economic growth and one is based on monopolization and speculation. BRICS countries get rich by building shit, and Wall Street in London and the World Economic Forum get rich by preventing people from building shit so they can maintain their monopoly. There's just a fundamental difference. They may overlap on terms of vaccines or different things. They both believe in climate change. I mean, there's certain things that there may be overlap on, but fundamentally they have opposite economic models. One of them is based on physical economy. One is based on fictitious capital or speculative false wealth. So there we go. All right. How do you deal with figures who are right on a lot but say disgusting racist shit? Candace Owens, etc. Well, that's a problem because the left have made, it's the whole little boy who cries wolf thing, right? There's obviously a lot of racism out there and stuff. But if you make anti-racism stupid, which is what they have done, then people don't want to hear legit anti-racist concerns. The reason Candace Owens says a lot of stuff about the history of the 20th century that I vehemently disagree with is because the people speaking in the name of socialism and communism are her enemies. So she's going to listen to people that say anything negative about socialism and communism because the people out there that are the enemies of America's working families, that are the biggest promoters of war and all of that, are the woke people that speak in the name of socialism and communism. We're in a weird spot where things are very ideologically mixed up. And the reason that they're very ideologically mixed up, it's the left's fault. It is totally the left's fault, right? And, and that, racism is a big thing. And the Uhuru movement is being targeted. Why is Tucker Carlson more supportive of the Uhuru movement than any communist group, right? I mean, why? Well, that right there tells you something, doesn't it? Right? Doesn't that tell you something right there? It's like we're in a time where accusations of racism have gotten to the point that they're so ridiculous and absurd, that you just have to, it's like, okay, so now there's going to be blowback, and that's what happens. There's blowback, and the little boy who cried wolf and all of that. And yeah, Candace Owens says a lot of awful things. It's funny. They're playing up this idea that Trump is going to cut off people's food stamps. Well, if he does that, that's awful. I believe we should have more food stamps. But you know who the first president in history to cut food stamps was? Barack Hussein Obama. And where was all of that during the campaign? Where was Kamala Harris out there saying, I'm going to defend your food stamps? I didn't hear that. That wasn't part of her campaign. Right. And, there's fear that Trump might cut food stamps. Well, why were they not, if that's a real issue the Democrats care about, why weren't they making that a central issue of the campaign? We want food for low-income families, and Trump is against it. And we're going to do something about it. Clearly, the Democrats had the same plan. They didn't even pretend that they had a different plan. So there you go. There you go. We now are going to start answering super chats. But before we do that, I posted a video yesterday that was my review of the film, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And so I'm just going to put that on. It's 5 minutes. If you haven't seen it, it's on the YouTube channel already. It was just my reaction to this children's movie that I went to see with my wife. Then after that, I'll answer the super chat questions. Then we'll be done. So here we go. I went to go see the Best Christmas Pageant Ever, the movie that came out recently, the children's movie. And I was particularly excited to see the film because I was familiar with the short story that was published. I remember reading the book as a kid, reading it in school. It's a classic children's text. I believe it was originally published in 1972. It tells the story of a Christmas pageant in a small town that becomes taken over by a group of juvenile delinquents, troublemaker kids, and in the process, the town learns something about the true meaning of Christmas, Christian love, acceptance, that kind of thing. Set in the past, in the 1960s, and it is very much a story of small town gossip and rumor, children bullying each other, the judgment that is poured down on people, and how all of this plays out and culminates in a very interesting Christmas pageant in a small town. The short story itself was already a very, very religious story centered around the Christian story of Christmas and the birth of Jesus Christ. However, what I noticed about the film was that they amped up the religious aspects even more than the original short story did. They really seemed to emphasize not only the religious aspects and Christian acceptance, but also the notion of a community and how important it is to be in a community, how the needs of these juvenile delinquent children could be fulfilled by joining the local church, how the local church could be an accepting place and how it should learn to be accepting of them. Now, this comes as Netflix is obsessed with the notion of a cult, authoritarianism, dictators, illiberalism, and we're constantly being inoculated against any notion of an illiberal movement, a movement that pushes collectivism, could push to reinvent U.S. society beyond the irrationality of the market and the irrationality of the liberal order. It's certainly no secret that our society is becoming less religious than before. Church attendance is dramatically low across America, especially since the pandemic. Americans are just not involved in religious communities as they once were. And yet, it seems that at this point, Hollywood is churning out a number of films that are not simply aimed at Christian viewers, but almost kind of advertisements saying, get involved in a religious community. Unlike the book version of The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, in the film version, the children, the juvenile delinquents, end up joining the church, and it emphasizes that they needed a community. This reminded me of the film Jesus Revolution that came out a few years ago that seemed to have a similar vibe to it. It was not simply telling a story, and it was not simply entertaining people that were already primed to appreciate the message. It was almost a go-to-church advertisement, get involved in a religious community advertisement. Now, my feeling about what's going on here is this. I think across America, there are a number of people that are very dissatisfied with their conditions, also very upset and unhappy about the economy and the state of affairs, and also feeling very isolated from other people. They want to be part of an organization, and that there is a fear on the part of big sections of the U.S. foreign policy establishment that they may join some kind of illiberal movement. We saw what happened with January 6th and QAnon. We see how negatively they're reacting to the re-election of Donald Trump. And I feel like these films that all have a kind of join a religious community, join a mainstream church message to them, these films are more or less saying this is a safe outlet for your anti-establishment sentiments. If you're feeling alienated from society, if you're feeling angry at the government, if you're looking for a community to belong to, the safe thing to do is to join a mainstream church, a mainstream religious community. Ultimately, what millions of Americans, especially those living in small Rust Belt towns who are angry with the political establishment and seeing their living conditions go down, need is a mass movement of anti-imperialists. They need to join the Center for Political Innovation. They need to join the movement we are creating to mobilize Americans to reinvent the country as part of the emerging economic order that is in opposition to the decaying Atlanticist, imperialist economic system. We need a new America with a government of action that fights for working families. And I don't think liberal churches are going to fulfill the deep frustration, needs, and desires of so many Americans. But that seems to be what the establishment is currently trying to do. And a wave of films that are pointing Americans toward the liberal churches, the mainstream churches that they have largely turned away from in recent years, seem to be coming out from Hollywood. This enjoyable children's film was yet the latest example. So that was my review of that film. If you can do me a favor, if you liked that review, share it with a few people. I'm trying to do, a balance. I want to do short videos in addition to the long ones. So there we go. So, all right, I've got 3 super chats that have come in. I'm going to answer them. There we go. So imperialism is the export of capital. What if instead of putting tariffs on imports, we put them on exporting capital, taking 40% of every dollar invested overseas to reinvest here, subsidized loans? Okay. Well, here's the thing, all right? The export of capital is not the export of commodities. It is the corporation itself setting up shop overseas. And that corporation would become incorporated overseas as a new corporation. It would send money back. That's not exactly, it doesn't work that way, right? The export of capital is not like the export of commodities. It's not like Walmart says, all right, we are sending a company to, it's like, no, a new corporation is created that is a subsidiary of Walmart. It's created in Brazil or whatever. It sends money back to Brazil, but it also invests locally. It's not what you're describing, the export of capital. This is corporations spreading their tentacles across the planet. It's not like a product. Okay. The export of capital is not like the export of a product. You can't tax it directly because it's a complex thing, right? You can tax the profits that are made from it. But yeah, you can't put like a tariff on exports. That's not, and exports, again, that would be exporting commodities. These are the corporations themselves. It doesn't work that way. I understand what you're getting at. It's kind of clever in a way, but I don't think it works that way. My understanding of how these things work is that doesn't match. So there we go. I apologize, Perpetuous Augustus. I hope I'm not raining on your parade. It is an interesting idea, and maybe you can flesh it out more. But I don't quite see it working that way. All right. We are all in this together. Thank you for speaking up for us. Well, thank you, Wendy. I am doing my best. Some days are easier than others. Today was an okay day. Got Thanksgiving tomorrow. My wife and I are going to have a nice dinner. I'll probably come on. Friday is going to be a really great day. Please join us. The phone lines are going to be open all day on Friday. Anyone will be able to come on. We're going to be on for 8 hours. Different members of our community will be streaming and doing party games and activities. It's going to be a great day. It'll be fun all around. And I hope that you will join us because it's going to be absolutely tremendous on Friday. And we need people to join CPI, right? We liquidated our nonprofit back in July. We haven't been collecting dues in a while. We just started collecting dues again. In order to fund our activities, we need a layer of people paying dues. And so we need people to become members of the organization, and we need to rebuild our membership. So we're doing this stream as a way to just say, look, CPI is back in business. There's a lot of people, I think people probably watching this now who joined a while back and then, we stopped collecting dues. Well, you need to rejoin. You need to go re-enter your credit card so we can continue to collect dues. It's just something we need. So if you can continue that, we're going to do a fun stream and we're giving out prizes. Maybe you should join on Friday so you get some of the prizes. Every hour, we're going to have a different book that we give to every person who joins that hour. That's what we're doing on Friday, and some other prizes and fun activities. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. So join the Center for Political Innovation. Join our Friday stream. It's going to be great. Are pseudonyms allowed in CPI? Absolutely. We love to respect people's privacy, and there are already people in CPI who use pseudonyms for their CPI work, and we allow that. We have no problem with that. I believe you have the right to it. We're going to know your real name because we're going to see your credit card information, but we're not going to tell the whole group your real name. And we do that, and it's important. I think it's an important thing to have layers between yourself and, you know, your job, your political activities. You know, I used to, well, anyway, I mean, it's an important thing. A lot of people do that to protect yourself. So there you go. Yeah. So listen, folks, we are about to hit the 2-hour mark, and I don't see any more super chats. So I'm going to put on the closing music. I'll be back probably tomorrow evening. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.